All right, hey guys, we are going to go through the second half of the lesson, which covers more of lesson 6.5. So you're going to want your packet out from yesterday, and we're going to go through some problems. So we're still solving two-step equations, but they're going to look a little bit different than the one from yesterday. So let's do a quick review. If I told you here that you and your three friends went to a burger place and you're going to each order combo meal number 1. So you're going to order it, your friend's going to order it, your other friend, and your other friend. So you're all ordering it. And I wanted to come up with a quicker way to order this. I could say, hey, I'm going to order 4 of the exact same thing. Do you remember how to write that with the distributive property? So instead of writing the same thing like, hey, a fries plus a burger plus a drink, and then doing plus another fry plus another burger plus another drink. Do you remember a quicker way to write that? Well, we did learn how to do that using the distributor property. So instead of writing it out 4 times, I could say, hey, I've got 4 people ordering the exact same thing. A fry plus a burger plus a drink. Okay, now if I wanted to actually distribute this, I could say, hey, we're going to end up with 4 fries plus 4 burgers plus 4 drinks in the end. This is called the distributive property, and we worked with that earlier in Module 5. So we're going to use that today when we're writing some word problems, writing some equations for word problems. So let's take a look at our first one. It says Mrs. Byers is making 5 costumes. All right, so first thing, that's important. She's making 5 of the exact same costumes. Each of those costumes requires 1 3/8 yards of blue fabric and a certain amount of red fabric. So they didn't tell us how much, but it's a certain amount. We're not sure what it is. Total, she's going to use 8 3/4 yards in all. So that's important. We would want to say that too, or underline that. Write and solve an equation to determine the number of yards of red fabric she will need for her costume. So this is kind of nice. This is the question. Can you find the number of yards of red fabric that she needs? So for the variable part, we're going to say, hey, let's let R equal the number of yards of red fabric. We can just write red. Okay, so in this problem, it already told us what we were going to use. It told you to use R, so we're going to use that. So now, after you get that written, let's see if we can come up with the equation. So I'm going to give you a second to see if you can write an equation, and then we'll do it together. Okay, so let's just think if she was making 1 costume. If she was making 1 costume, she would need the 1 3/8 yards of blue plus some red. That would be just for 1 costume, but she's doing 5 of those. So instead of doing, writing that 5 times, I can put, hey, this is what she needs for a costume. We need 5 of those. And then total, it says they're going to use 8 3/4 yards. Okay, so here's all of her fabric, her red, her blue. She's making 5 of those. Total, it's 8 3/4. So we just wrote an equation using the distributive property. Now we are going to try to solve this equation. So before we solve it, you may notice that we have some fractions and we have some decimals. If I was solving this one and I have a calculator and you do too for this unit, I'd probably change those to decimals. Now, hopefully you already know the decimal for 8 3/4. That's the same as saying 8.75. Okay, so I'm going to come over here and just change this to 8.75. I'll keep my 5. Okay, I'll keep my plus R. Now I need to change 1 3/8. So a couple different ways you can do it. I know my whole number is 1, so I'm going to put 1 point. And then for the 3/8, I need to do on my calculator 3 divided by 8. Okay, so go ahead and type that in if you have your calculator handy. I end up with 0.375. But I already know I have a whole, so I'm going to put 1.375. So that's how much blue I use. All right, now I am going to solve this problem. So when we solved this in the past, earlier in the unit, we learned 2 different strategies to solve this. We learned that you could either divide by 5 right away, or you could distribute it out. On this one, let's go ahead and distribute it out. And I forgot my equal sign. So I'm going to do 5 times 1.375. So go ahead and type that in, 5 times 1.375. I end up with 6.875. Plus distributive property, I need to do 5 times the red fabric. So that's 5R, and then that equals 8.75. All right, my next step is I want to isolate the variable. I want to get that 5R by itself. All right, so I need to do the opposite of adding 6.875, or the inverse, I should say, and I need to subtract 6.875, or add in a negative. So I'm going to do add in a negative 6.875. Again, you have a calculator, so no reason you should be getting this wrong. So let's go ahead and that zeroes out. That makes a zero pair. I end up with 5R equals, now you can use your calculator and do 8.75 plus negative 6.875. If I'm doing that, I know I have more positives. So I know my answer is positive. Basically, you're subtracting those two, and I end up with 1.875. Okay, one more step. I got 5 times R equals 1.875, so I'm going to do the inverse operation and divide both sides by 5. And I end up with 5 divided by 5 is 1, so I end up with R equals, then I just have to do 1.875 divided by 5. When I do that, I get 0.375. So my red fabric, we need 0.375, or 375 thousandths of a yard. Okay, so down where it says solution, I'm going to put 0.375 yards of red fabric. There is my solution. All right, let's try our next problem. Example 5, Jamal and 2 cousins. Okay, so that's kind of important. We have Jamal and his 2 cousins. So right away I think, oh, how many total people is that? Well, that's 3. There's 3 people. They received the same amount of money to go to a movie. Okay, so they got some money to go to a movie. Already, it doesn't tell us how much, but we know they got some money. I'm probably going to have to give that a variable, so maybe I'll just call that X right away. It says each boy spent $15 of that money. Afterward, altogether, they had $30 left. Can we write and solve an equation to find the amount of money each boy received? Right there, it tells us what we are trying to find. That goes for the variable. So let's do let X equal the amount of money received. I'm just kind of abbreviating. I know it's a tight little squeeze there, so see if you can fit that in. All right, now we have to try to write the equation. So why don't you pause the video and try to write the equation. Okay, so first thing, I know that the boys got some money. Each of them got X dollars. So I'm just going to say, hey, if it was just me, or Jamal, I should say, he got X dollars, and then he spent 15. So think about if you spent 15. That'd be subtracting 15. Now, that's just for one of the boys, Jamal. He's also got 2 cousins. So total, there was 3 of them that got that same amount. So I'm going to say, hey, I got to take that, times it by 3. Because just X minus 15 was just for one of them. Okay, and then equals, in the end, they have $30 altogether. So now why don't you pause the video and try to solve this equation. All right, now that you've tried it, let's go ahead and try to solve it. So there are a couple different ways that you can solve this one. Remember, you can either distribute or you can divide. So if we take a look at this one, remember, this is saying like 3 times that group of X minus 15. So the inverse of multiplying is we could actually divide both sides by 3. Okay, because I have 2 terms. I could divide this term by 3 and this term by 3. So if I do that, and we did this earlier in the week, 3 divided by 3 is 1. So I just end up with X minus 15. And then 30 divided by 3 is 10. Okay, now I just have one more step. If I want to isolate the X, I'm going to think, what's the inverse of subtracting 15? Well, that's adding 15 to both sides. All right, negative 15 and positive 15, that will zero out. That makes a 0 pair. So I'm left with X equals 25. So now if we think about our solution, remember it said let X be the amount of money received. So that means that each boy got $25 to start with. Let's actually do a quick check on this one. So here was my original equation. I had 3 parentheses instead of X. We think the boys each got $25. They spent 15, so minus 15, and were they left with 30? So if I was going to work that out to make sure it checks, let's follow the order of operations and do inside our parentheses first. 25 take away 15 is 10, and then I have times 3. Hopefully that equals 30. Well, 3 times 10 is 30. 30 does equal 30. My sides are balanced, so I know I did that problem correctly, as long as I wrote the equation correctly as well. All right, we have one more problem. So it says Pierre uses 2 rectangular pieces of paper as bookmarks, and you can see that they have those drawn. It says the width of bookmark B is equal to the length of bookmark A. All right, so first thing I'm going to say is I see the length of bookmark B, or the width of bookmark B, that's right here, is equal to the length of bookmark A. Okay, now it doesn't tell me what that measurement is, so let's give that a variable. Let's call that x, and let's call that x as well. Okay, it also says the length of bookmark B is equal to half the perimeter of bookmark A. So this length here is equal to half the perimeter of bookmark A. Now it doesn't tell us the perimeter, but I'm just going to come right perimeter right here. Okay, well actually it does. It says the perimeter of bookmark A is 14. So the perimeter of this one is 14. And now it did say the length of bookmark B, that's this, is half of the perimeter. So half of 14, let's see if we can figure out what half of 14 is. Well, that is 7. So I know that this is 7. Okay, and then it says, hey, could you find the perimeter of bookmark B? All right, so I know this side is 7. I know this side is x. I can just kind of label this. So I need to try to figure out, hey, what is the width of, or what is the perimeter of bookmark B? But before I can do that, I need to figure out what x equals. Okay, so let's say let x equal the length of bookmark A, because that was the first thing it kind of told us. All right, so I need to figure out this length, because if I know that, then I can figure out this one. So the only thing I know, let's think about what they tell us about this first one. We know the perimeter of bookmark A, so that's kind of nice. We can actually write an equation finding the perimeter. So I know this side's x, so is this side. So I've got x plus the top and the bottom, or the width, is 2.5. Well, 2.5, that's the same as 2.5. So I'm going to do plus 2.5 plus 2.5 equals 14. All right, now I have an equation that I can hopefully figure out what x equals. So let's draw our line down. All right, before we do this, let's go ahead and combine some like terms. We haven't done too many where we actually have to combine. So if I had x plus x, that would give me 2 x's. Plus, if I had a 2.5 and a 2.5, that would give me 5 equals 14. Now, you should be able to solve this equation from there. So first step, remember the most efficient step is to isolate the variable, get the 2x kind of by itself on one side. So the inverse of adding 5 is subtracting 5, or adding in a negative 5, however you like to think of it. All right, this will zero out. I end up with 2x equals 9. Okay, one more step. Right now it's multiplying, so the inverse operation is dividing by 2, so I need to split it into 2 groups. I end up with 1x equals 9 divided by 2 is 4.5. Okay, so I know that that x length is 4.5. So right here on bookmark A, that's 4.5, and on bookmark B, the width is 4.5, and so is this. All right, so now let's actually read what our final question was. It says, what is the perimeter of bookmark B? So I need to find, hey, what's the perimeter of bookmark B? So I'm only looking at this one. So if I look at that bookmark, I know that's 7 and 7 on that side. The width is 4.5 and 4.5. You need to find the perimeter of that bookmark. So all I need to do is add all of those sides together. So I've got 7 and 7, that's 14. Plus I have 4.5 and 4.5, that's 9. So 14 plus 9 is 23. So the perimeter of bookmark B is 23 centimeters. I know it's centimeters because it gave me a label over here. So there is my perimeter of bookmark B. So our learning intention for today was, can we write and solve two-step equations? And hopefully you're able to identify the key words and then what operation is needed, and then use inverse operations to solve and check two-step equations.